The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, and Marcus stepped inside, adjusting his tie with the confidence of someone who knew he belonged. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of the corporate tower, casting golden light across the marble lobby he had just left behind. At 28, Marcus had climbed the ladder at Peterson and Associates faster than most, and he wore his success like an expensive suit. As the elevator began its ascent to the 15th floor, Marcus pulled out his phone to check his emails. The quarterly meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock, and he had prepared extensively. His presentation on the new marketing strategy was going to impress the board, he was certain of it. After all, he had been the top performer in his department for 3 consecutive quarters. The elevator stopped at the 7th floor, and a woman stepped in. Marcus glanced up briefly from his phone, noting her simple black dress and modest heels. She carried a worn leather briefcase and moved with quiet purpose, but said nothing as she pressed the button for the 20th floor. Marcus returned his attention to his phone, scrolling through industry news and checking his stock portfolio. The woman stood silently in the corner, her hands folded in front of her. Marcus noticed she seemed older than him, perhaps in her early 40s, with graying hair pulled back in a simple bun. There was something unremarkable about her presence, the kind of person who seemed to blend into the background of corporate life. She reminded him of the administrative assistants who worked on various floors, the ones who quietly managed schedules and filed paperwork while the real decision-makers shaped the company's future. As they passed the 10th floor, Marcus felt a surge of excitement thinking about his upcoming presentation. He had spent weeks analyzing market trends, consumer behavior patterns, and competitive landscapes. His proposal for expanding into the digital wellness sector was innovative and bold. He imagined the impressed faces of the board members, the handshakes and congratulations that would follow. The elevator continued its smooth journey upward, and Marcus caught a glimpse of the woman's reflection in the polished steel doors. She was reading something on her phone, her expression focused and serious. He wondered what administrative task occupied her attention. Perhaps she was coordinating someone's calendar or managing travel arrangements for an executive. When they reached the 15th floor, Marcus straightened his shoulders and prepared to exit. This was his floor, his domain. As the doors began to open, he felt compelled to make conversation, perhaps out of politeness or maybe to demonstrate his friendly corporate persona. "Big day today," Marcus said with a casual smile, stepping toward the doors. "Quarterly presentations always get the blood pumping, you know?" The woman looked up from her phone and nodded politely, but said nothing. Her silence struck Marcus as odd, but he attributed it to shyness or perhaps nervousness about whatever minor task she was handling for her boss. "I'm sure whoever you're assisting is lucky to have you," Marcus continued, his tone carrying a hint of condescension he didn't even realize was there. "These big meetings can be stressful for everyone involved." The woman's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. She simply nodded again and returned her attention to her phone. Marcus shrugged and stepped out of the elevator, thinking nothing more of the brief interaction. As he walked down the hallway toward the conference room, Marcus felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. The walls were lined with awards and certificates, testimony to the company's success and his role in achieving it. His name was engraved on several plaques recognizing outstanding performance, and he never tired of seeing it there. The conference room was already filling with his colleagues when Marcus arrived. He exchanged pleasantries with other department heads, discussing weekend plans and sharing industry gossip. The atmosphere was relaxed but anticipatory, like the calm before an important storm. Sarah Martinez from Human Resources waved him over to her group near the windows. "Marcus, perfect timing. We were just talking about the new wellness initiative the company is considering. Sounds right up your alley." Marcus joined the conversation, his interest piqued. "Wellness initiative? I haven't heard anything official about that." "Apparently it's been in development for months," said David Chun from finance. "Very hush-hush. I hear they brought in some serious expertise to evaluate the market potential." This news intrigued Marcus. If the company was exploring wellness markets, his presentation would be perfectly timed. He had identified the digital wellness sector as an untapped opportunity with enormous growth potential. His research showed that consumers were increasingly willing to invest in apps and services that promoted mental health, fitness, and overall well-being. As more people filtered into the room, Marcus noticed the usual hierarchy taking shape. Senior executives claimed seats at the large oval table, while junior staff arranged themselves in chairs along the walls. Marcus had earned his place at the table through hard work and results, and he took his seat with justified pride. The room buzzed with conversation about quarterly numbers, market forecasts, and strategic initiatives. Marcus contributed to several discussions, sharing insights from his market research and offering opinions on various proposals. His colleagues respected his analytical mind and track record of successful campaigns. At exactly 10 o'clock, the CEO, Robert Peterson, entered the room followed by his assistant carrying a stack of folders. Peterson was a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded immediate attention. He had built the company from a small consulting firm into a major player in the marketing and strategy space. "Good morning, everyone," Peterson said as he took his seat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for being here. We have quite an agenda today, and I'm excited to share some developments that will shape our company's future." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This was his moment to shine, to present his vision for expansion and demonstrate why he deserved continued advancement within the organization. Peterson opened his folder and glanced around the room. "Before we begin with departmental presentations, I want to introduce someone who has been working closely with our executive team over the past several months. She's been conducting a comprehensive analysis of market opportunities and organizational efficiency." Marcus looked toward the door, expecting to see another consultant or perhaps a new hire being brought in to present their findings. These kinds of introductions were common in corporate settings, though he wondered why this person's work hadn't been mentioned in any of the pre-meeting communications. "Her expertise in digital transformation and wellness markets has been invaluable," Peterson continued. "Her recommendations will significantly influence our strategic direction for the next 5 years." The room fell silent with anticipation. Marcus adjusted his presentation materials, curious about what this mysterious expert had discovered. He hoped her findings would complement his own research rather than compete with it. Peterson looked toward the door and smiled. "Please join us." The conference room door opened, and Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The woman from the elevator walked in, carrying the same worn leather briefcase and moving with the same quiet confidence he had observed earlier. But, now, in the context of the boardroom, something was different about her presence. The silence that had seemed like shyness in the elevator now appeared to be the quiet authority of someone who chose their words carefully. Marcus stared in disbelief as she took a seat at the table, not along the wall with the junior staff, but in one of the prime positions typically reserved for senior executives. His mind raced, trying to process what he was seeing. This was the woman he had assumed was an administrative assistant, the person he had spoken to condescendingly about assisting someone else with their stressful meeting. The woman opened her briefcase and removed a tablet and several folders with the practiced efficiency of someone completely comfortable in high-level corporate environments. She glanced around the room, her eyes briefly meeting Marcus's, and he thought he detected the faintest hint of recognition. Peterson gestured toward her with obvious respect. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet our new Senior Vice President of Strategic Innovation. She'll be leading our expansion into emerging markets and overseeing the digital transformation initiative." Marcus felt the color drain from his face as the full weight of his elevator encounter began to sink in. The woman he had patronized, the person he had assumed was someone's assistant, was not only a peer but his superior. She would likely have significant influence over his career trajectory and the approval of projects like his digital wellness proposal. As she prepared to address the room, Marcus realized that his assumptions and casual condescension in the elevator had just become the most professionally embarrassing moment of his career. The presentation he had been so confident about suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the impression he had already made on one of the most important people in the company. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked around the conference room with the calm assessment of someone who had faced similar situations countless times before. At 42, she had spent nearly 2 decades navigating corporate environments where her expertise was often questioned before it was respected. The elevator encounter with the young man now sitting 3 seats away had been nothing new, just another reminder of the assumptions people made based on appearances. She had earned her PhD in behavioral economics from Stanford, spent 8 years at McKinsey & Company, and had successfully launched 2 startups in the digital wellness space before Peterson and Associates had recruited her 6 months ago. Her track record spoke for itself, but she had learned long ago that credentials meant nothing if people had already decided who you were based on a 30-second interaction. Elena opened her presentation on her tablet, glancing briefly at Marcus, who was now staring at his hands with obvious discomfort. She felt no particular satisfaction in his embarrassment, only a familiar weariness at the predictability of such encounters. How many times had she been mistaken for an assistant, a coordinator, or someone's wife attending a corporate event? "Thank you, Robert," Elena said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had made her one of the most sought-after consultants in Silicon Valley. "I'm pleased to be here and excited to share what we've discovered about the opportunities ahead of us." She connected her tablet to the room's projection system, and her first slide appeared on the wall-mounted screen. The presentation title read, "Digital Wellness Revolution, Market Analysis and Strategic Recommendations." Marcus felt his stomach drop as he recognized that her research had covered exactly the same territory as his own proposal. "Over the past 6 months, I've conducted extensive research into emerging market opportunities," Elena continued. "My analysis indicates that the digital wellness sector represents a $47 billion market opportunity that is expected to triple over the next 5 years. The room was completely silent except for the soft clicking of keyboards as people took notes. Elena's presentation was comprehensive and sophisticated, incorporating data sources and analytical frameworks that went far beyond anything Marcus had prepared. She had conducted consumer surveys across 12 demographics, analyzed competitor strategies in 14 countries, and developed detailed financial projections for various market entry scenarios. Marcus watched in growing dismay as Elena outlined market segments he had never considered, presented consumer insights that made his own research appear superficial, and proposed strategic approaches that demonstrated a level of sophistication he was only beginning to appreciate. Her recommendations weren't just about entering the digital wellness market, they were about fundamentally transforming how the company approached innovation and customer engagement. "The key insight from my research," Elena explained, clicking to a slide showing consumer behavior patterns, "is that wellness isn't just a product category anymore. It's becoming an integral part of how people make decisions about everything from career choices to financial planning to relationship management. Companies that understand this shift will capture disproportionate value in the next decade." David Chen raised his hand. "Dr. Vasquez, how do you see this fitting with our existing client base? Most of our work is with traditional manufacturing and retail companies." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly why this represents such a significant opportunity. Our traditional clients are facing disruption from digitally native companies that understand wellness-conscious consumers. We can help them adapt and compete, while also expanding our service offerings to growth-stage companies in the wellness space." She clicked to the next slide, which outlined a detailed organizational structure for a new division that would specialize in digital transformation and wellness market strategies. Marcus realized that she wasn't just proposing a new service line, she was architecting a fundamental expansion of the company's capabilities. "I'm recommending that we establish a digital innovation lab," Elena continued. "This would be a dedicated team of specialists who understand both traditional business strategy and emerging digital trends. The lab would work with existing clients on digital transformation while also developing new relationships with wellness-focused companies." Peterson leaned forward with obvious interest. "What kind of timeline are you thinking for implementation?" "I believe we can launch the pilot program within 90 days, Elena replied. "I've already identified several potential clients who would be interested in participating. The key is to start with companies that are already committed to digital transformation but need strategic guidance on execution." As Elena continued her presentation, Marcus felt his own proposal becoming increasingly irrelevant. Everything he had planned to suggest was covered in her comprehensive strategy, but with far more depth and sophistication. She had thought through implementation challenges, resource requirements, competitive responses, and even potential regulatory considerations that he hadn't considered. The worst part was that her research was genuinely impressive. This wasn't a case of office politics or favoritism, she had simply done better work than he had. Her analysis was more thorough, her insights were deeper, and her recommendations were more actionable. Marcus found himself taking notes on her presentation, recognizing valuable perspectives he wished he had discovered himself. When Elena reached the section on market entry strategies, she presented 3 different approaches with detailed cost-benefit analyses for each option. She had modeled various scenarios, identified key risk factors, and developed contingency plans for different market conditions. The level of preparation was extraordinary, representing months of careful research and analysis. The aggressive growth scenario would require an initial investment of $2.3 million but could generate $15 million in additional revenue within 18 months, Elena explained. The conservative approach would cost less but would also limit our ability to capture first-mover advantages in key market segments. Sarah Martinez asked about staffing requirements, and Elena outlined a hiring plan that would bring in specialists with backgrounds in digital marketing, behavioral psychology, and wellness industry experience. She had even researched potential candidates and identified recruiting strategies for finding the right talent. Marcus glanced around the room and saw his colleagues completely engaged with Elena's presentation. People were asking thoughtful questions, taking extensive notes, and clearly excited about the possibilities she was outlining. This wasn't just a good presentation, it was the kind of strategic vision that could transform the entire company. When Elena concluded her formal presentation 45 minutes later, the room erupted in discussion. Peterson was clearly impressed, and other department heads were already thinking about how their teams could contribute to the proposed initiatives. Elena answered questions with the confidence of someone who had anticipated every possible concern and prepared thorough responses. "This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking strategy we need," Peterson said finally. "Dr. Vasquez, I'd like you to work with each department head over the next 2 weeks to develop implementation plans for your recommendations." Marcus realized that his own presentation, scheduled for later in the meeting, was now completely overshadowed. How could he present his basic market analysis after witnessing Elena's comprehensive strategic vision? His research wasn't wrong, but it was elementary compared to what she had just shared. As the meeting moved on to other agenda items, Marcus found himself studying Elena more carefully. She participated in discussions about budget allocation and resource planning with obvious expertise, offering insights that demonstrated deep understanding of corporate finance and operational management. This wasn't someone who had been brought in just for her research capabilities, she was a complete executive with broad business knowledge. During a brief break, Marcus overheard Elena talking with Peterson about her background. She mentioned previous work with Fortune 500 companies, successful product launches, and board positions with several wellness-focused startups. The conversation revealed a career trajectory that was far more impressive than Marcus had achieved at his age, or might ever achieve. When it came time for Marcus to present his digital wellness proposal, he felt completely deflated. He gave a condensed version of his original presentation, hitting the key points but acknowledging that Dr. Vasquez had already covered much of the same territory with greater depth. His colleagues were polite but clearly more interested in discussing Elena's comprehensive strategy than his supplementary research. "Thank you, Marcus," Peterson said when he finished. "Your research supports many of Dr. Vasquez's recommendations. Perhaps you and she could work together to refine some of the implementation details." Marcus nodded and managed a professional smile, but internally he was mortified. His big moment had become a footnote to Elena's presentation, and his elevator encounter with her now loomed as a professional disaster. He had not only been condescending to his new superior, but he had also demonstrated the kind of assumptions and biases that could damage his reputation within the company. As the meeting concluded, Marcus watched Elena gather her materials with the same quiet efficiency she had displayed in the elevator. She spoke briefly with several colleagues, exchanging contact information and scheduling follow-up conversations. Her demeanor was professional and friendly, showing no sign that she harbored any resentment about their earlier interaction. But Marcus knew that first impressions mattered in corporate environments, and his first impression had been terrible. He had revealed himself to be someone who made quick judgments about people based on superficial observations, someone who felt comfortable being condescending to people he perceived as less important. These were exactly the kind of character flaws that could limit career advancement, especially when displayed in front of someone who would now have significant influence over his professional future. The rest of Marcus's day passed in a blur of second-guessing and anxiety. After the meeting ended, he returned to his office on the 15th floor, closed the door, and sat staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. His mind kept replaying the elevator conversation, analyzing every word and gesture, and imagining how different the interaction might have gone if he had simply remained silent. He pulled up Elena's LinkedIn profile on his browser, wanting to understand more about the woman he had so misjudged. Her credentials were intimidating: PhD from Stanford, senior positions at 3 major consulting firms, founder of 2 successful startups, and board memberships with several prominent wellness companies. Her profile photo showed the same quiet confidence he had noticed in the elevator, but now he could see it for what it was: the assurance of someone who had earned her place through exceptional achievement. Marcus scrolled through her published articles and speaking engagements. She had presented at major industry conferences, authored papers on digital transformation strategy, and been featured in business magazines as one of the top innovation leaders under 50. Her work had influenced companies across multiple industries, and she was frequently quoted by financial journalists covering technology and wellness trends. The more Marcus learned about Elena's background, the worse he felt about their encounter. This wasn't just a case of mistaking someone's role, he had demonstrated exactly the kind of unconscious bias that sophisticated companies were working to eliminate. Elena was undoubtedly aware of such dynamics and had probably experienced similar situations throughout her career. Around 3 o'clock, Marcus received an email that made his stomach clench with dread. It was from Elena, sent to all department heads, requesting individual meetings to discuss integration opportunities for the Digital Wellness Initiative. Her message was professional and straightforward, but Marcus couldn't help wondering if she remembered their elevator conversation and whether it would influence her assessment of his potential contributions. His meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the 20th floor conference room. Marcus spent the weekend researching everything he could find about Elena's previous work, hoping to demonstrate that he understood and respected her expertise. He also began preparing talking points that would show his genuine enthusiasm for the digital wellness strategy while acknowledging the limitations of his own initial research. On Monday morning, Marcus arrived at work early, hoping to clear his head and prepare for the challenging week ahead. As he waited for the elevator in the lobby, he felt a familiar surge of anxiety when he heard the soft ding announcing its arrival. The doors opened, and Elena stepped out, carrying her worn leather briefcase and moving with the same purposeful stride he remembered from their first encounter. She noticed him immediately and offered a polite smile. "Good morning, Marcus. I'm looking forward to our conversation tomorrow." "Good morning, Dr. Vasquez," Marcus replied, careful to use her proper title. "I've been reviewing your presentation materials. Your research is really impressive." Elena nodded graciously. "Thank you. I'm excited to learn more about your market analysis. I think there may be some interesting opportunities for collaboration." Her tone was professional but friendly, with no hint of coldness or resentment. Marcus felt a slight sense of relief, though he knew that Elena's professionalism didn't necessarily mean she had forgotten or forgiven his earlier behavior. The rest of Monday passed slowly as Marcus refined his preparation for their meeting. He researched recent developments in the digital wellness space, studied Elena's published work more carefully, and developed several specific proposals for how his team could contribute to her strategic vision. He was determined to demonstrate that despite his poor first impression, he was capable of valuable professional contributions. Tuesday morning arrived gray and rainy, matching Marcus's apprehensive mood. He spent the early hours reviewing his notes one final time and practicing responses to questions Elena might ask. At exactly 2 o'clock, he knocked on the conference room door and heard Elena's voice inviting him to enter. The 20th floor conference room was smaller and more intimate than the main boardroom, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. Elena was seated at the round table with her tablet and several notebooks spread in front of her. She gestured for Marcus to take a seat across from her. Thank you for making time for this conversation, Elena began. I've been looking forward to discussing your thoughts on the digital wellness opportunity. Marcus took a deep breath and decided to address their previous encounter directly. Dr. Vasquez, before we begin, I want to apologize for my comments in the elevator last week. I made assumptions that were completely inappropriate, and I realize how my words must have sounded. Elena looked at him thoughtfully for a moment before responding. I appreciate your acknowledgement, Marcus. These situations happen more often than you might think, and I've learned that they usually reveal more about workplace dynamics than individual character. Her response was measured and professional, but Marcus detected a hint of something else in her tone. Perhaps it was disappointment, or maybe just resignation at having to deal with such issues repeatedly throughout her career. Your elevator comments were certainly presumptuous, Elena continued, but I'm more interested in your professional capabilities than in past social missteps. Tell me about your vision for digital wellness marketing. Marcus felt both relief and continued anxiety as Elena redirected the conversation to business matters. He began presenting his ideas, focusing on market segments he believed were underexplored and consumer trends he had identified through his research. Elena listened carefully, taking occasional notes and asking clarifying questions that demonstrated her deep understanding of the subject matter. Your analysis of the younger demographic is particularly interesting, Elena said after Marcus finished outlining his consumer research. I noticed similar patterns in my data, but you've identified some behavioral nuances that I hadn't fully considered. Marcus felt encouraged by her positive response. I think there's a real opportunity to develop wellness products specifically for people in their 20s and early 30s who are just beginning to think seriously about health and life balance. Elena nodded thoughtfully. That aligns with some pilot programs I've been developing. What kind of marketing approaches do you think would resonate with that group? For the next hour, Marcus and Elena engaged in the kind of substantive professional discussion he had hoped for. She challenged his assumptions, offered insights from her broader experience, and suggested refinements to his ideas that demonstrated her sophisticated understanding of both marketing strategy and consumer psychology. Despite the awkwardness of their first meeting, Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying the intellectual exchange. Elena's questions were probing but not hostile, and she seemed genuinely interested in his perspectives even when she disagreed with his conclusions. She shared examples from her previous work that illustrated successful and unsuccessful approaches to similar challenges, providing valuable context that Marcus had been missing in his own analysis. I think there's real potential for collaboration between your team and the Digital Innovation Lab, Elena said as their meeting began to wind down. Your consumer insights could be valuable for developing our marketing strategies, and your team could benefit from exposure to the more complex analytical frameworks we're implementing. Marcus felt a surge of optimism. Despite his terrible first impression, Elena seemed willing to evaluate him based on his professional contributions rather than their awkward elevator encounter. I would be very interested in that kind of collaboration, Marcus replied. I think my team could learn a lot from your approach to market analysis. Elena closed her notebook and looked at Marcus directly. I want to be clear about something. Your comments in the elevator reflected assumptions and biases that can be harmful in professional environments. However, everyone makes mistakes, and what matters more is how we learn from them and move forward. Marcus nodded, appreciating her directness. I understand, and I want you to know that I've been thinking about that interaction ever since. It made me realize that I need to be more careful about my assumptions and more respectful in my communications with colleagues. That kind of self-reflection is valuable, Elena said. Professional growth often comes from uncomfortable moments that force us to examine our own behavior and attitudes. As they prepared to leave the conference room, Elena handed Marcus a folder containing additional research materials she had compiled. These might be useful for your team's work. I've included some case studies from companies that have successfully navigated similar market opportunities. Marcus accepted the folder gratefully, recognizing the gesture as both professional courtesy and an indication that Elena was willing to move past their initial encounter. Thank you, Dr. Vasquez. I really appreciate your willingness to work with me despite our rocky start. Elena smiled, and, for the first time, Marcus saw genuine warmth in her expression. Everyone deserves a chance to demonstrate their capabilities, Marcus. I'm looking forward to seeing what your team can contribute to this initiative. As Marcus left the conference room, he felt a complex mixture of relief, gratitude, and renewed determination. Elena had given him an opportunity to redeem himself professionally, but he knew that earning her respect would require consistent demonstration of the insights and work ethic he had claimed to possess. The real test of their working relationship was just beginning. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same 20th floor conference room where he had first attempted to redeem himself with Elena, but now the atmosphere was completely different. The room was filled with representatives from 3 major wellness companies, 2 venture capital firms, and several Peterson and Associates executives, all gathered to celebrate the successful launch of the Digital Innovation Lab's first major client project. The transformation had been remarkable, both for the company and for Marcus personally. Under Elena's leadership, the Digital Innovation Lab had exceeded every projected milestone, securing 12 new clients and generating over $8 million in additional revenue. More importantly for Marcus, the collaboration had fundamentally changed how he approached both professional relationships and strategic thinking. Elena stood at the front of the room, presenting the results of their latest market expansion initiative. Marcus watched her with genuine admiration as she outlined the success metrics and lessons learned from their pilot programs. Her presentation style remained understated and precise, but he now understood that her quiet confidence came from extraordinary preparation and deep expertise rather than personality traits he had initially misinterpreted. The key insight from this project, Elena was explaining to the assembled group, is that wellness-conscious consumers respond most positively to authenticity and long-term thinking rather than traditional marketing approaches focused on immediate gratification. Marcus thought back to his own evolution over the past 6 months. Initially, his collaboration with Elena's team had been tentative and somewhat formal, with both sides carefully navigating the aftermath of their awkward first encounter. But, as they worked together on increasingly complex projects, Marcus had begun to appreciate not only Elena's strategic capabilities but also her approach to leadership and team development. She had been patient with his learning curve, offering guidance without condescension when he struggled with analytical frameworks that were new to him. More importantly, she had created opportunities for him to contribute meaningfully to projects that stretched his capabilities and expanded his understanding of market strategy. The breakthrough moment had come during their 3rd month of collaboration, when Marcus identified a consumer behavior pattern that Elena's team had missed in their analysis of millennial wellness spending. His insight had led to a significant refinement of their client's product positioning strategy, ultimately contributing to a 23% increase in customer acquisition rates. Marcus deserves particular recognition for his consumer psychology insights, Elena had told Peterson during their monthly review meeting. His ability to identify subtle behavioral patterns has become invaluable to our analytical process. That recognition had meant more to Marcus than any previous professional achievement, because he knew it was based on genuine contribution rather than politeness or obligation. Elena's endorsement carried weight precisely because she was discriminating in her praise and focused on measurable results. As Elena concluded her presentation to the client group, Marcus reflected on how their professional relationship had evolved into something approaching mutual respect and genuine collaboration. They had developed an effective working dynamic, with Elena providing strategic oversight and analytical rigor while Marcus contributed consumer insights and marketing execution expertise. The personal growth had been equally significant. Marcus had become much more conscious of his assumptions about people, particularly in professional settings. He had started paying closer attention to how his colleagues were actually contributing rather than making quick judgments based on superficial observations. This shift in perspective had improved not only his relationship with Elena but his interactions with everyone in the organization. After the client presentation ended and the guests had departed, Elena asked Marcus to stay behind for a brief conversation. They sat down at the conference table where they had first attempted to move past their elevator encounter. "I wanted to thank you for your contributions to the project," Elena began. "Your work has been consistently strong, and your insights have genuinely improved our analytical capabilities." Marcus felt pleased but also curious about where the conversation was heading. "Thank you," Dr. Vasquez. Working with your team has been one of the best learning experiences of my career. Elena smiled. I have something to discuss with you. Peterson and I have been talking about expansion plans for the Digital Innovation Lab, and we're looking for someone to lead the Consumer Strategy Division of the new initiative. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This sounded like the kind of opportunity he had been hoping for, but he was cautious about assuming too much. The position would involve managing a team of 5 analysts and working directly with clients on consumer behavior strategy, Elena continued. It would also require relocating to our new Seattle office, which we're opening specifically to serve technology companies in the Pacific Northwest. Marcus was stunned. This was far beyond what he had imagined possible when he first joined Elena's initiative as a junior collaborator. That sounds like an incredible opportunity. Can I ask why you're considering me for this role? Elena leaned back in her chair and looked at Marcus thoughtfully. Because over the past 6 months, you've demonstrated exactly the kind of growth mindset and analytical capability we need for expansion. More importantly, you've shown that you can learn from mistakes and adapt your approach based on new information. Marcus understood that she was referring not only to his professional development but also to how he had handled their initial encounter. I want you to know how much I've learned from working with you. Not just about market strategy, but about leadership and professional judgment. That kind of learning is exactly why I think you're ready for increased responsibility, Elena replied. The Seattle position would give you the chance to build something from the ground up while applying everything you've absorbed over the past months. Marcus felt both excited and nervous about the prospect. Leading a team and relocating to a new city would represent significant personal and professional challenges, but the opportunity to work more independently while maintaining his connection to Elena's strategic vision was incredibly appealing. I'm definitely interested, Marcus said. When would you need a decision? Take the time you need to think it through, Elena responded. This kind of career move shouldn't be rushed. I can tell you that Peterson is very enthusiastic about your potential, and the compensation package would represent a significant increase from your current position. As their meeting concluded, Marcus realized how dramatically his circumstances had changed since that morning 6 months ago when he had made assumptions about a quiet woman in an elevator. His moment of condescension had almost derailed what became the most important professional relationship of his career. Elena had taught him that true expertise often presented itself quietly, that assumptions based on appearance or manner were usually wrong, and that professional redemption was possible for people willing to acknowledge their mistakes and commit to genuine growth. Most importantly, she had demonstrated how effective leadership could create opportunities for others to succeed while maintaining high standards for performance and behavior. Walking back to his office that afternoon, Marcus passed the same elevator where everything had started. He thought about the person he had been that morning, confident but narrow in his thinking, successful but limited by his assumptions about others. The Marcus who stepped into that elevator had been focused on his own advancement without fully understanding what genuine professional excellence looked like. The experience had taught him that competence and authority came in many forms, that first impressions were often misleading, and that the most valuable professional relationships were built on mutual respect rather than hierarchical assumptions. Elena had given him a second chance despite his initial poor judgment, but, more importantly, she had shown him how to become the kind of professional who earned respect through contribution rather than demanding it through position. As Marcus prepared to make his decision about the Seattle opportunity, he felt grateful not only for the career advancement but for the fundamental lesson about judgment, assumptions, and the importance of remaining open to learning from people whose value might not be immediately obvious. The quiet woman in the elevator had changed his career trajectory, but she had also changed his understanding of what it meant to be truly professional. He knew that whatever decision he made about Seattle, he would carry these lessons forward throughout the rest of his career, approaching new colleagues and situations with the kind of humility and respect that Elena had modeled despite his initial failure to extend the same courtesy to her. The elevator encounter had been embarrassing, but the growth that followed had been invaluable.